just are we are more we just find ways to reinvent ourselves when these things happen. I mean, I started reinventing myself after 9/11. Um, Prior to that, I was really full force as a costume designer and also painted, but I was spending more time in taking art classes at the time and sort of honing my technical skills, but my career was a costume designer. And after 9/11, I lost so much work. And I said, okay, I'm going to start branching out and doing these other things. It did make it harder because I was less focused on any one particular job, and I've had to learn to refocus in a different way. Also, the world has changed so much, and there are so many things one needs to do for their business on the internet, which I previously had never paid attention to, i.e., social networking. And so I have to backtrack, and I've been backtracking and going, okay, this is a new language that I need to learn, which does not come easily to me.
Nor does it to a lot of folks. I mean, making those changes. As you were just talking, it made me think about kind of models that I have both for change in business as well as the costume process. Uh, I think of Madonna and Lady Gaga as being examples of two women who have gone through a lot of adaptations and changes in terms of costume and their you know, just again their presentation to the public and
That's right.
how much they've adapted. And it seems to me that that is a visual model for the way that a lot of people in the creative world need to think. Is that, and again, you use the word adaptation to the change and to the market rather than just saying, I'm going to stay where I am and hope the world comes back. So, yeah.
You can't stay where you are anymore. And the world is changing at a faster pace, and it's going to continue to do so. And technology is driving a lot of that, and but it enters into all of our personal lives also.
Yeah, it seems to me that we need to make a kind of corporate costume changes, at least by the month, if not the week sometime, that is just constant adaptation to, I mean, staying true to the core of who we are and what we do, but just recognizing that the market is adapting and we need to be able to stay light and nimble on our feet, as it were. So
Right, right.
when I'm, again, speaking of wardrobe, when I'm photographing someone or preparing them for a film interview, I try to work with them on what to wear based on things like their seasonal colors and fabric patterns that enhance their skin tones or
Right.
body profile. But when you work with a client on their look, you go so much deeper and more intimate with trying to draw out and accent their personality and help them shine as a person. Talk about that process that you go through when you're
Yeah,
working with people.
it's really important. First of all, I have to say, I don't see clothes as superficial. I see them as an expression of who we are or what we want to portray. And anything that you put on is telling a story. And we live in a very visual world these days, and people don't necessarily realize it. Much of it is subliminal, but it's there. And so any kind of presentation it's important to be aware of what statement you're saying to your public, your clients, your work. And so when somebody hires me, I assess who they are, what they do. Um, I spend a lot of time getting to know them. I am not, my training was not fashion based. Because I came out of the costume world, I understood character. And character in clothing. And so I approach people's personal style that way also. I'm not a fashionista. I'm not into trends. I'm interested in people feeling better about themselves, and that is one way to do it. And I'm actually preparing to uh, start. What I would like to do is start working with women in a workshop situation because I find that the message of what we should look like, what beauty, youth, whatever is getting just more and more extreme, and people are reacting to it, and also they they get frustrated that they cannot live up to what mostly the media tells us we should be looking like. And I really want to start doing work with women, particularly, um, to help guide them back to a place that this sense of beauty and vitality comes out of themselves and not trying to fit into whatever this picture is that we're constantly being bombarded with. So working with clients, I find out a lot about them and how they feel, and also the practical parts of what is their price point when they want to spend money on clothing. And so there's a number of things that come into play, and one is sort of teaching them how to sort of up the ante in a way of who they are, but even better, that makes them shine when they're out in the world, and makes people just sort of pick up on it and sort of notice, but also organizationally, what helps them at home. Um, I even work with their hair and makeup, and people tend to feel better about themselves after I've worked with them.
No doubt.
And that makes me happy. And I do it with love. That's the most important thing.
Well, people want to know that you care, and when you've invested that much into who they are and a sense of themselves, then that caring alone, it would seem, would make a huge difference even before they've put on a new change of outfit.
Right. And also, what I find, it's been my experience over and over again, uh, that almost everybody, when I take them out shopping, um, the only people this has not happened to was certain performers like dancers and opera singers. Um, they You will always hear them make a negative comment about themselves. I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm not this. And because of all these images that are being blasted at us constantly. I mean, how many of us are now 6 feet tall with manes of hair and weigh 100 pounds, which is what the media has been selling us lately?
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely having a huge impact on the way that people present themselves. Um, and again, women far more than men, it seems to me, that are having to battle with that. If speaking of change, if there's something you could change about yourself, what would it be?
Well, if you had asked me that when I was in my 20s and possibly in my 30s, but mostly in my teens and 20s, I would have said, "Oh, I want to be taller. I want to have more hair, probably." It was something physical. Um, I don't, I don't feel that way now. Um, I'm really trying to think what I would change, and I'm not sure I would change anything except to have more financial freedom, which I don't think is a change, is a that's more a working towards. Um and also to feel content and peaceful. But that's yet again not something one changes, that's something one works at every day.
Well, speaking of freedom and contentment, what would you use that financial freedom to do? What would change if you felt like you had financial freedom? What would you do that you're doing differently now?
I would spend less time in New York. I love New York City. It's a great place, but it's also a very intense place. And um, I have been finding ways to be able to get out for at least a couple of months a year. Um, but I would like to be able to do that when I want and uh, with more freedom and less concern about it. Because there's always the concern that when I'm away, I get an email that somebody wants to book me on something. And it's a little nerve-wracking because if you're not there to get booked on a job, particularly on shoots, or somebody's looking for a decorator, somebody else gets the job. And you just need to be present to get the work because very quickly they'll forget about you and go on to somebody else. So there's that, and I would probably spend more time painting, which is what I'd like to be doing.
Well, good. What are some other fears that you're struggling with right now, and how do they show up?
Financial is my biggest fear at this point in my life. And especially as I'm aging, that whole thing that you have to have, a certain amount put away, whatever, for your aging process. Um, it's mostly financial. I struggle with work sometimes. I struggle with painting. I have moments of fear where, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Um, the, the typical creative things that happen to us, the negative voices that come in when we're trying to create or creating. Um, so there are those fears, and there are times where, it'll take me a little longer to actually start a painting because you feel like you're delving into the abyss. And if you don't do it, then you can't feel bad about it, if that makes sense. If you don't take the risk, you're in a very safe place, but safe is boring.
And it's also risky by not getting out there and
That's
making that
right.
effort. Uh, Before we actually started our official conversation, as we were just kind of warming up and chatting, you talked about imposter syndrome and your hearing your introduction or hearing your accomplishments kind of fed back to you can create an awareness of that or thought. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to hear some of the things I've done because oftentimes I don't give myself enough credit for any of those things. And I have been a person who always feels it's really, really important, whatever you were doing, to work on that craft. And so um, anything I've done has come with a fair amount of training and working on it. None of those things are like, oh, okay, I think I'll just do this today. So there's a fair amount of studying with other people I've done, or education or whatever. Yet I don't give myself the credit for for having done these things or take myself seriously